Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hala-Days episode 5. We missed 1 week because I was waiting for the spoilers to come out. And then I didn't upload. I mean, they came out, I think, basically a day or two after Tuesday of last week. But I didn't upload because I was taking in everyone else's content surrounding them and really trying to develop my thoughts about all of it. And so that's what this episode is going to be about. This is a bit of an episode 5 and also 5.5. So it might be a bit longer, but I think we only have a few weeks left until calling Kansas City. So I'm going to try to maybe record a game either live or I might have to do a Talishar. Try to do a VOD review at least once, and then kind of a final deck tech before calling Kansas City. So that's what we're gonna do. To start, I'd like to say that again, I've been watching a lot of content. You can find all sorts of content about the Mastery Pack as a whole. And this is obviously focused specifically on Hala, and I'm specifically thinking about the cards I'm going to review through the lens of calling Kansas City. Like, obviously, there are a lot of cards that Hala could play, but the ones I think that are worth considering are only the ones I'm going to talk about. And I'm not putting them. The order I'm putting them in is going to be in the order that their number is for the Mastery Pack. So there's no this is the most powerful, so we're starting here, right? We're just going to start with the first one that comes up that I think is worth talking about. So, yeah. But before we begin, I want to talk about my initial thoughts on Hala. So before we begin, I'd like to talk about my initial thoughts for Mastery Pack Warrior. So I think it's important to remember that I am not a Warrior player necessarily. Like, I don't walk around saying Warrior is my favorite class. So all of this is through the lens of the context that I'm a Hala enjoyer. Ultimately, I've written here, ultimately, I think it's weaker for Hala in terms of the diversity for the builds than I had hoped. I think that and we'll talk about this when we talk about the cards, but I think a lot of the cards lend themselves to fatigue oriented more so than a mid range setup. I do not feel that there are very good or strong offensive cards. And the ones that are offensive, like we've already talked about And Again on the series, but like even And Again is more of a mid-range or a long-term, a second cycle card that you would use. So even though you're using it to attack, it's more so to put the enemy in a state of attrition, right? And I think ultimately most of the cards lend themselves to this kind of idea that you are like the angle for the deck is mainly going to be fatigue. I think people will lie to you or themselves and say that no, she actually does a lot of damage, and that is true, she does. Like, for example, a guy named Adam Urban, I think is his name, just won a 97 player showdown, or no, battlegrounds in Poland. And I think 4 of his games were on stream, maybe, or at the very least, the deck that he played was on stream 4 times. And each game did end technically with him sending Swordmaster Shine to kill them for the game. But I think the deck is built that it gains life. It just blocks forever, and then on the turns that you play Beck and Steel, you pop off. And that was before Mastery Pack, and I think it only will lend itself more, which we'll talk about. But ultimately, I think it's a huge improvement in terms of Guardian, Mastery Pack Guardian. This Mastery Pack is minimum 6 out of 10, which I think the previous one was I don't know, people might say 3. If you're a Guardian player, you might say a 2 out of 10. If you're a Valda enjoyer, maybe a little higher. But I think I think it's a similar situation with this one. If you like Olympia and you like that Olympia got a bunch of good cards, you might say this is an 8 out of 10. Because I feel that where Hala might have gained, if we're talking about an out of 10 scale, Hala might have gained 1 or 2 points, whereas like Olympia went from 0 to maybe a 7 out of 10 deck, right? So I'm just a bit ultimately jealous that the people who play Olympia or like Olympia and now finally get to play him uh, got such a huge amount of equity. Whereas I think Hala got good cards, glue cards, but not cards that I think are going to send her to like, I don't know, that the cards will propel me to a calling victory, you know? Um, but ultimately, it was a good set. It was a good set. I don't think it was a great set. I think people have talked about this ad nauseum, but I did put that the idea of the mastery pack in general is kind of confusing to me now, especially after everything was revealed. I don't feel that like the idea that you are mastering this warrior with like there are good reprints and they're strong, but like I think that a lot of people who play warrior, I don't know, like the Grains reprint is awesome, Blade Flurry is awesome, Unsheath is awesome. Like these are great reprints. But I don't know that the Mastery Pack added much new to the game other than Sharpen, which is only sword, and then all of the Olympia wager cards, which is like, okay, so we're mastering one aspect of the many warrior weapons that there are: daggers, axes, one-handed swords, two-handed swords, right? That like it doesn't really feel quote unquote like I'm mastering the class when I buy these packs. Um, but ultimately, I mean, it's good because it also serves other functions. Like this set serves other functions like crack shuffle play, using it for Smash Palace, introducing people to the game. It's great for a Silver Age. Like a lot of the cards are going to be good, make Warriors way better in Silver Age. So, and there's collector pieces too, which is awesome. Like I think there are so many good parts about this, but I am just a bit like going forward. I am confused about like in terms of the least fleshed out classes, which was Guardian and Warrior, it's like it didn't really get further in terms of fleshing them out more. So I don't know. I just think that's something to talk about going forward. But again, this is a series about Hala, so let's continue. So, like I said, we're going to talk about cards in the order that they appear in the set, and if I think that they're worth considering for calling Kansas City. Overwhelming Swing. This was revealed a while ago. Additionally, I'm just going to structure it as like a pros and cons list of each card. I might talk more or less about certain cards. And these are like over the last couple of days, especially the way I've seen lists evolving. These are just cards that have caught my attention and the things I think that are good and bad about each of them. So, Overwhelming Swing. The pros. This is a like the times that I played with it, it's like a game-ending card. Like if they block with 3 cards, it ends up being a 3 for 7. So like a 2-card 7 at reaction speed is absolutely insane. The reason I say 7 is because it says +1 at the end, which is easy somehow to forget. But that the way this works is like it's only going to really be good. So here's one con. It's only going to be really good in something like Dory, who can tutor it, number 1, and then number 2 is like has one big chain link that people want to block out, as opposed to like Kasai would never run this card, I don't think, because she, like in terms of the possibility, you know, she can have upwards of 3, 4, 5 chain links that each have maybe 1 card blocking on them. So like a 1 for 3 at reaction speed is not bad, but it's just like she could use a resource in a better way. And you know, maybe Olympia could use this if they're going like big on Golden Grail. But ultimately, I think Hala could use this, but it would not be like you would not shape your identity around this card, and you would end up like maybe playing 1 and hoping that it comes back later in the game so you can win with it. Pro of this is that it's a yellow card. Yellow, weirdly, in this deck is like really powerful because any Guardian player will tell you that even though they structured their deck to have 30 plus blues in it, that sometimes you still draw all red hands like 2 turns in a row. And I had found that recently that I was doing that so often, and I kind of restructured my deck for a bit. And when I was playing with this card, most of the time I was just glad that it pitched for 2 so I could play Edict of Steel and swing twice with that resource. So yeah. Um, the last con is that it's extremely expensive at like resource intensive at 4 or more cards blocked with it, because it will do so much damage. Like at 4 it becomes 9, and at 5 it becomes 11. But you have to be able to pitch 2 blues for 5, right? Like, so if someone is trying to save their life, it's like probably not gonna be very affordable unless it's at the end of the game when it's like your blue cycle is going off. Next we have Sharpening Sparks. Next up we have Sharpening Sparks. I'm gonna go on record and say this is the worst card I've ever seen. I don't really know what this card is for. Maybe I don't understand the power of this, and if someone at Kansas City or Hamburg before Kansas City can prove me wrong and that this is a good card, I'd be happy to be proven wrong. But I would go on record and say this card is basically worthless. In that, at a armory level, maybe you could, like, maybe people are just there to have a good time and don't really, they didn't know you had Sharpening Sparks in your deck. But I think a good tournament player is never going to allow this to matter at all. Like, the someone who understands that sharpening at reaction speed, giving you go again and the ability to utilize your flurry token would just simply never allow this to hit. And because it does not say sharpen without hitting, like if this said 0 for no, it had no plus physical damage value. If this just said sharpen target sword at reaction speed, I think this is extremely playable. It doesn't even have to have a value in terms of physical, but it relies on the opponent to be either have no reactions, which in the modern era is not going to happen, and like even like a Cilio, who is like the aggro or spell deck, that like even a Cilio is going to be able to stop this, right? So it just doesn't make any sense that anyone would run this. Like, when I first started like wanting to play Hala, I saw this card and I was like, oh, but you can swing your sword and then when it hits you can get go again. But the problem is like it's an if, and this is the biggest if in the whole deck. If you put this in your deck, it would be the biggest if. Like, if the opponent is somehow boneheaded enough to allow you to get the full effect of this, then like I guess they deserve to lose, because it just the interaction this calls for is it makes it unplayable. I mean, it doesn't sharpen reliably, and ultimately it's just too cute for this to be like playable at all. I just kind of don't understand. Like, maybe this is a bomb and crack shuffle play, you know what I mean? But in terms of this, I just can't understand how, like, this is not even majestic. This is like barely rare quality in my opinion. So, yeah. Again, maybe I could be wrong, and I'd be happy to be proven wrong. I'd be happy to play more aggressive cards. I just don't understand how this could ever be an aggressive card. And again, this is the best card from the whole set. Drawn to the Blade. I think this is one of my favorite things about this was going to be one of my favorite things about the set, and ultimately this will take me back to the beginning with my Master Pack Warrior thoughts, is that it adds meaningful sharpens to the deck. And I wish there were more cards that did this in the set, like I mean, that's kind of the thing, I guess, with Hala, is that the design space is kind of infinite going forward. That any at the 1, 2, or 3 cycle, or 1, 2, and 3 counters, it doesn't even have to be a pitch cycle type of thing, but that you are meaningfully sharpening on your way to 3, right? So like one or two. So that one or two sharpens to get to that third more powerful one maybe is it has proven difficult. And I think, a majestic red sharpen that has an effect, I think is going to be maybe like way later down the line. I think it might be too powerful to put like a command and conquer effect on a red card. But just to say, like, I am stacking effects and not just doing redundant things. Like, for example, it could be in the future that you don't have to play Red Swordmaster's Path, so that you don't have to sharpen additional times because you have enough meaningful 1, 2, and 3 sharpens. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's cool about this card. It's also a yellow card, which I talked about earlier is like extremely valuable. And the effect lasts the whole turn. So this is, I think, the best part about it. The old joke so far in Warrior players is like you have to read the card 8 times to truly understand it because it could say, like, for example, I said earlier in the video that it's a sharpened sword was two-handed sword. That's not true. It says on the cards that sharpen is just target sword. However, I don't think I could be faulted for that because a lot of warrior cards printed like say like sharpen target two-handed sword if it was a Tuesday and you had already played a red card this turn. That's kind of the old Josh Lau joke, right? Or maybe he stole it from Nathan Crawford, but that the way that cards are written for this character or this class is that they're hyper specific because the effects are too strong to be more generic, like target warrior attack or target warrior weapon. That too many cards would be too strong. So I think it's really good that instead of it saying the next attack gets, right, it says the next time you hit with this sword this turn, draw a card. So I think that's really good. That's really powerful. The problem here, though, is in my testing that this alters the deck so radically because you cannot play this card and block cards. I think Verdant's players know this when I say this, is that anytime you would E-strike into a draw card and you would draw a mental block, you would say, okay, I guess I lose the game now. Which was never honestly very true because Verdance was a busted character. But that if the amount of testing I did where I drew an unplayable card, like quite literally, you couldn't even arsenal it, like there was not even a way to play it, you have to change your deck so that every card you draw is a potential arsenal. Or, that if it's a blue that you haven't sharpened with Hala yet, and like, oh, it's not an arsenable blue, I'll sharpen with Hala and send my next attack if they hit. Or that if you end and hit on the second chain link, you're like, I hope it's a D-React or a Command and Conquer or something that's good in the arsenal, right? That ultimately that this effect is best used when you are going to have something like maybe Swordmaster Shine, or you're dumping resources, like a way you can make this hit on the first swing, or that somehow you know what you're going to draw, right? Or that like it was just a meaningful way to get to 3, right? It just kind of changes so many things. I would never say that this is a bad card. I like this card and I will be playing this card. However, I can say that it has frustrated me testing with it because I would draw Fiddler's Green and say I'm going to reduce my life total to 0 now. Ultimately, though, think it's a great card. I like it a lot. I like the design space of sharpening, and this is exactly the type of thing I was looking for. If they release better cards, I could see me taking this out of my deck. But also, though, I like drawing cards, right? And I like the name in relation to the effect and the art. I think that's fun. So I like the card. I like it a lot. But it does make you think about the deck differently than what is just like inherently strong, right? Up next is Honed for Honor. This is a great card because it's another meaningful third sharpen. and especially late in the game, and especially paired with the previous card we saw. This is like an an insanely powerful effect. If you can meaningfully pull this off, right? Even one time in the game, I think is worth it. You know, you're sharpening to put another card back on your deck. You're trading one for one, right? And it's a power card. Like if you're putting Beck and Steel back on your deck, like resolving 4 Beck and Steels in a game is like you probably have already won if you resolve 3, right? So this is incredible. It's a good blue block 3. Hala's blue base is becoming like extremely difficult to decide on. I think maybe Carol wrote about it in the like tournament wrap up for Pro Tour, but the way that a Hollis player's blue base will be, I think, will determine a lot about how much they understand the hero, and I think that's great. Ultimately, this also can be used as just a regular sharpen. If you're late in the game and you already pitched your blue to sharpen Hala's hero ability, you know, using this to sharpen a third time to get a flurry token, if you're in that dire of a strait, this is a good thing to have. And it has awesome art. Look at that. I think we all agreed this is at least someone related to the Warband of Bologna pick. So it's really cool. Soya May, I think is her name, does a lot of cool stuff. The con is obviously that getting to 3 sharpens and then wanting to use this card will prove really awkward. I think most people are going to be running like 2 of these instead of 3. But like getting here 2, 3 sharpens and using it on this is like you got to really be thinking about either the long game or you got to have been like, oh, I really need to see this D-react or attack react on the next turn, right? So things to think about with that. But ultimately, I think this is a good card. Lessons learned. This is probably the most powerful card and the most class-altering card in the set. In that it is Remembrance right after they've banned Remembrance. Like, I can't imagine what Hala would have been like if we had Remembrance and this. It would have been 8-hour games for every round, because you can bring back 3 reactions, and if you had Remembrance especially, you could bring back your red flurry generator, which then you could Ominous Excavation and bring back, like, this would have been just so degenerate. And the reason is because shuffling 3 cards back into your deck, we have learned is powerful enough to warrant the ban of the card. And especially to end a game. Like, I think even an aggro list, whatever that would even look like for Hala, even an aggro list would run this card. Obviously, because like I think even Fang players are considering this as like borderline automatic, right? The reactions is the most, I guess, crucial part of the warrior identity, and getting back your signature reaction, like let's say your Fang, you get back Brimstone. If you get back Fire and Brimstone, you're like, wow, this is crazy. It's like one of my power cards. Hunt's End, obviously. Like Dorinthia, you shuffle back in. Anything with Reprise late into the game, you shuffle back anything that tutors Glint to give go again and draw a card. Like, all of this is just like, I mean, Kasai, if you shuffle back in blue, go again sources, like, this is just crazy. And the only downside at all is that it does not block. This is like, I mean, again, this is going to alter the way that especially tournaments are decided. I think like this could be a deciding factor for a lot of things. So this is definitely a card to look out going forward. Display of Artistry. I think a lot of people are down on this card, but I think it's something to consider, especially going into calling Kansas City specifically. If at any point and any time that you think like, oh, every class is running 9 D-Reacts, like this card might be imperative. Especially for Hala, because she says sharpen, like this card says if she is sharpened, like you can turn this on whenever you want, right? The main reason I'm saying that is because damage adds up over time, especially with Hala, is like a lot of games, even on Fatigue, where like, for example, on the Polish Battleground stream, I think a Jarl had 4 cards left in their deck, and Adam Urban, I think is his name. I could be getting that wrong. pushed it over with a Swordmaster Shine to win the game by damage, right? And that those incremental points of value can get you to that state of the game way quicker. And it really messes up the way people plan things out. I think one of the biggest points of equity in any game of Flesh and Blood is to disrupt the norm of what people have gotten used to, especially in a tournament setting. When people think, oh, my Pulse of Eisenloft is going to defend for 6. Wrong. It's going to defend for 5. And I think people try to calculate things very perfectly, especially good players in tournament settings want to make sure that all of their cards convert for the exact amount of value. And if you can make that happen, that it doesn't convert that way, I think it's really powerful. It also says all reactions, not just the first one. The problem is it says, again, weapon attack. So it's not sword for the entire turn. It's just the certain attack that you're on. So, if someone is like reacted a lot, you played Beck and Steel and they covered it up by 1, you pump it over, that reaction gets a -1. The next reaction they would play if they could is -1 too, so you'd still be over, right? This is a really good card. I don't know that it will be played, but I do think it's something to consider. I think it's something people haven't talked enough about. And the good thing is it comes in red, yellow, and blue, so it can fit the need that you need it to do. The problem is that it's dead space in the deck if the opponent has no reaction cards. Obviously, this counts for attack and defense reactions. So it's like into certain decks, it's just like, it's literally just a 1 for 3 that's worthless. But, if that's the way you've slanted your deck, you expect a tournament or, your local PQ or something like that, I think it's good in that way. But I don't think it's powerful enough to be a full-on tech card, right? Like, you have to truly know my opponents, like maybe you're at, it's at the beginning of your local scene. You're just starting up playing Flesh and Blood. Everybody's bought an armory deck and everybody has like 60 reacts minimum. Like, this could be powerful then, but as soon as people start fleshing out their identity, I think people use less and less D-reacts as they understand the game better. And unless it's something like a fatigue deck, right? But like at your locals, it could be that like a gravy player plays Blood on the Water only in their deck, right? So it's like, I don't know, it's just not powerful enough to be a full-on tech card. So it's not really good enough to be in the sideboard yet, and it's not really good enough to be main deck. So it's not probably going to be in my deck, but I do think it's worth considering. The Donkey Suite, that's what I just called these reacts that wager for +1 and give an effect on to the winner. This is obviously, I think these are the ones that are being talked about more than anything, especially Donkey, is that like the disruption that this causes for 0, and if it doesn't cause disruption, it's like nip at the heels, which people have already played nip at the heels. So I don't understand why you wouldn't just play this, right? Especially if you're arsenaling this card, there's no downside. It's just +1 in your arsenal. That was a blue card. Like say you drew this off of Drawn to the Sword. So it's a blue block 3. And really the only downside of these cards is that it's kind of occasionally awkward to resolve. In that, like, I have an arsenal, and if I win, I would destroy my own arsenal, right? Like, that would be kind of whack. So, ultimately, I don't know. It's like, I think it's really good. I think like I said, almost everyone who talks about in the videos I've seen, Arsenal Pass, Josh Lau, Bagel TCG, I think everybody agrees. This is a really good card. And I think the interesting thing about this card too is like, for example, in Olympia, Golden Grail gets at reaction speed gets +2, which is really strong for a blue. And then for Hala, if you're playing Paragon Plate, you can guarantee your win if they block you out perfectly, that you just like play this and then use Paragon Plate to remove a +1 counter. So I like that also that these play different in different heroes. I think that's really cool. The yellow one is not playable in Hala, by the way. That's why I didn't put it up here. And the red one's not playable at all. But these are obviously a good card. Shove Off, sick. Gonna be in my deck no matter what. I actually have replaced Provoke with this card. Provoke is good, but my list leans way more aggressive mid range as opposed to defensive mid range, and I'm not fatigue at all so far. And obviously, shove off is way better. I want to remove cards and mess up. Like, for example, we're playing against a tough nut, which is not unreasonable at a tournament setting in America, by the way. I think there will be tough nut players. And, they want to block with more cards and send rock with 0 cards on their hand. This screws that up. I think people willing to throw away cards on a defense, especially against a deck that does not prevent on hits or disruption, people are just blocking because they're like, this isn't a good card for me to resolve anyway. And I think, especially when you see a card, like, for example, you see say you're playing against a Kasai, and they just see, like, I don't even know, some random blue block 3 that it's just in their deck to, like, provide a function of, like, drawing or pitching. Like, putting this back in their hand is like, oh, I would have gotten 3 value out of this, but now I won't, right? It's great. So it's like 1 for 3 almost all the time. And then there are very niche use cases of this too. For example, my brother plays Bolton, and he like, the last card he played on a reaction or on a chain link was Soul's Shield, for example. And you have to pitch to play Soul Shield. You have to pitch to play Staunch Response, right? That you're gaining equity out of this card, even if the person can then play it again, right? Like, let's say, for example, a Gravy plays Blood in the Water, that you put that card back into their hand, and if they don't have a card with Watery Grave, sure, they can still play this for 0 for 4, but they don't get the +2, and they don't get another card in their yard. So I think there's a lot of niche cases for this. Also, it's a blue block 3, and also it has the coolest art of all time. I think maybe the Polish players who have been playing Hala saw that Tomas got a Winged Hussar in the deck, and they were like, "We got to play this hero so we can play this card." But this is one of the coolest arts I've ever seen. Also, a Tomasz Jedruszek special, Rest Before Battle. Now, I think this card is really bad, but it's awesome art. That's the first thing I gotta say. This is probably the coolest art they've ever printed or not ever, but this is one of the coolest arts they've printed in the last, like, 2 years. But I do actually think, as soon as I saw this, I was like, this is an awesome setup card on the turns that you have no flurry. Because especially if you have full tempo, this basically just says, like, you better do a lot of damage to me next turn, because on my turn, I'm drawing a card and I'm going insano mode. But the problem is it's a bad card because the conditions, which is you have to have attacked with a weapon, which is not really resting before battle. It's resting after battle. But I really think this is a cool setup card. It's a good way to use your action point. Especially if you don't have something like Command and Conquer or a follow-up like you didn't draw and again. I don't think I'm going to play this at all, like, don't get me wrong. I do think it's probably way better than to be dismissed, but I mainly want to talk about it because it looks really cool. Oh god. Up next we have Dice Up. This card would have been awesome. Like, this card could have won me games and maybe tournaments when I had played Dory, specifically because Prism, even if your sword hits, you could remove things like Arclight Sentinel just by removing a +1 counter. The problem here is that, like, this is a really good card because getting rid of the aura without them, if it has Spectra, without having to attack it, or without getting its full effect, for example, like, say you remove a Malefic Incantation, like, that's going to be really powerful. I think this is considerable about main board. A lot of people play auras, and a lot of people make auras too. And, like, against Guardians is actually super powerful. Against Runeblades, powerful. Against even Warriors, extremely powerful. The problem is again, it just relying on a hit, especially against a warrior who is not uh, producing meaningful disruption where people can very easily save their reacts. Like, I'll wait till you do have something that matters to block, right? That I think is just going to be really hard, especially against something like an illusionist. Like, the illusionist right now is Ziggy, and Ziggy is like super block and ward heavy. So it's like it would be very difficult to make this hit at this moment in time against an illusionist. Um, and it just relies on an aura that is sticking around. For example, you could draw this when an opponent has no malefic incantations. Could draw this when a guardian has not played, you know, Channel the Frozen Lake or whatever the hell. Channel Lake Frigid. That you know, it's just like so conditional. I don't think it could be playable, but it is an extremely powerful tech card if things go your way. The best part about it is that Hala can guarantee that there is a +1 counter on a sword where other heroes cannot. So I think it's really worth considering. I don't know at this tournament, will it be worth it? I don't think so. So yeah. Showdown. Showdown. This card was not on my radar at all. Anything that said +1 or anything that said +3 for 1 was not a thing I was considering. But I have come to realize over the maybe even the last like 48 hours that in Hala, 1 for 3 is actually super strong. If I have time to make the video, if there's enough weeks left, I might make a video talking about the economy of sharpening, because I've actually come to realize that something like a Swordmaster's Path is so good because that +3 is just raw power. It is not, you know, for example, people talking about Drawn to the Sword, which we talked about earlier, as being like really weak because ultimately you're just adding 1 counter for the effect that might happen. Like, ultimately in Hala, any amount of beatdown is going to be really good. And any flurry generation is definitely going to be good. And anything that blocks 3 is super worth considering, especially if you were already going to play Toe the Line. If you play Toe the Line, you can consider this card, right? Blocks 3. The problem is, again, relies on hit. Which is also actually a positive for this card specifically, because if you're playing against a warrior and they have to block with 3 cards from their hand to make this not hit, that is like, you basically, even though they have a flurry for much later, they won't be able to use that flurry the next turn. There's just no way. So you're trading tempo for losing the flurry, but, you know, ultimately, I think most people have no use of a flurry, which is also why this is a really good card. Even though you're doing, again, a wager thing, like a Guardian is going to do what? Swing their Titan's Fist twice? Like, they can't give it go again. There's no way, right? So most people don't even have use of this. So yeah, I think that's really good. And ultimately, a 2-card 6 is powerful. So yeah. The biggest problem, again, I think in Kansas City, Warrior meta could be popping off. Like, it could be the tournament that Kasai leaves the format if she doesn't win in Hamburg. So I'm a bit worried about that in terms of this, that I think we'll see way more Warriors. But again, into Hala, if a lot of people play Hala, is a redundant flurry maker. Like, most flurry you can make on your own turn, which is also the con of this card, because I think, like, even though I don't run this card right now, I sometimes, very rarely, maybe 1 out of 4 games, I have a turn during that game where I have 2 flurry tokens, just because of circumstances. So it's like, sometimes it's like, are we too worried about producing flurry? I don't know. Okay, actually went way faster than I thought I would. So my final thoughts are, I think the direction the player base has decided the deck is going to go is much more fatigue oriented than mid range, which I think is kind of sad in my opinion. I like for example, the deck that won in Poland has a bunch of cards that convert for 4 on defense. It's like 27 generic cards in the main deck. And it is just kind of disappointing to me in a way that, like, I feel the identity of the hero, it should not be tied up in that. I don't feel the identity of any hero should be tied up in that, really. but it does still do a lot of damage. It is still mid-rangey, except it's just way more fatigue oriented. And not that I want my deck to be aggressive, but I like that Hala can switch up her like a good warrior would, can switch up her style match to match. Like for example, that I like that there are versions that you can play and cards that you can side in that would make your Acilio matchup, for example, that you wouldn't have to hope that they don't, do their turn before you can do enough damage that they get worried. Or that into a Jarl that you can put in all your cards and end up converting for way more value than they ever could dream of doing. And that they have to do really cute stuff like Call to the Grave a Fiddler's Green to be able to do enough disruption to get you to lose the game, right? Um, I think that version, like a more defensive version, is more powerful. But my thoughts about, especially in terms of the Mastery Pack cards, is that I'm worried too many people are going to be too focused on that, and will end up, if they go to events, will end up not realizing that the inherent values in a man are selfish, and that the person you're playing against is going to root for you to lose if you are fatiguing them. And that is my experience at local tournaments I've gone to. And I think that you have to rely on the goodwill of others way too much to win a tournament with a more defensive leaning deck. And that, for example, if you play against a Dio and they sit across from you, they know for a fact I have to win a fatigue match. And they have planned around that, right? They know how to do that. But if you sit across some random person who is just going to play their first tournament and they don't even understand that a fatigue angle is a possibility, or you're playing another fatigue player, that you might not make the outcome happen. And I think a lot of the cards in this set are lending the deck to be built that way. And I think that that could be a problem, which is a topic for another video. But ultimately, I think the set as a whole is good, and I think it's interesting. I don't think it's great, and I'm not. I want any hero and any player who plays their favorite hero wants their hero to be chain level power, right? But I just don't think you're ever going to get something like that, especially in a warrior. I think I was just hoping I would come out on top of the world. But ultimately, I'm excited. I'm excited to get my Marvels for Zenith Blade and Hala. And yeah, I think this is going to be a good time, and I'm excited about the cards that I get to play with from this set. I know people are probably they've already talked all about Master Pack Warrior. But if you want to talk about it, let me know. Put it in the chat. Ping me on Purple Discord. And yeah, just let's talk about it. You can yell at me if you think I'm wrong about things, or if I missed cards that you wanted to address, or that you think people are sleeping on. Especially like, I feel like sometimes I'm like, maybe I missed something. So yeah, let me know. What do you think? Smash that like button.